Tom had always loved the sea. The salty breeze, the sound of the waves, and the feel of the boat beneath his feet were all a part of him. For many years, Tom had fished for the village, bringing in fish to feed the people and keep the village alive. His boat, though old, had been his trusted companion. He had no family left, so the village and the sea were all he had. But Tom was getting older. His back hurt after long days, and his hands were stiff from mending nets and pulling in the heavy catches. His boat, once sturdy, was now cracked and leaking, and it was harder to get out on the water each day. The sea that had once felt like home now seemed a little more distant. One morning, as the sun began to rise over the quiet village, a messenger came to Tom's cottage. The king wanted to see him. Tom walked through the village with heavy steps. His heart sank with every step he took. He had heard rumors that the village was struggling. The king, though kind, had been unable to provide for everyone as much as he used to. Tom feared that he would be the one to suffer because of it. When he reached the king's palace, the door was opened by a servant. Inside, the king sat behind a large desk, looking troubled. His robes were rich, but his face was tired. He looked up at Tom with a sigh. "Tom," the king began, "I've called you here because the village is facing hard times. We can no longer afford to pay you for the fish you catch. The money simply isn't there. I'm sorry, but I need you to rest." Tom felt his heart drop. His life had been about fishing. Without that, he felt lost. "I understand," Tom said quietly, even though his voice trembled. "But what will happen to the village? What will they eat?" "I'll find a solution," the king said, but he didn't look very sure. "For now, go home and take care of yourself. You've done enough." Tom nodded slowly, but he didn't feel better. He walked back to his cottage with his head low. What was he supposed to do now? Without the sea, without the village, what was left for him? As Tom walked along the path to his cottage, he saw Lily, the king's daughter, standing by the edge of the village. Lily was known for her kindness, always helping the poor and the sick. She had long, dark hair that shone in the sunlight, and her eyes sparkled with a gentle kindness that made everyone feel at ease. "Tom, what's wrong?" she asked when she saw the sad look on his face. She could tell something was troubling him. Tom shook his head. "The king has asked me to stop fishing. The village can't pay me anymore. I don't know what to do now." Lily frowned. "That's terrible. But maybe there's something you can still do." Tom looked at her with confusion. "What do you mean?" Lily smiled softly. "You've spent your whole life fishing. You know everything there is to know about it. why not teach others how to fish? If you can't fish for them anymore, maybe you can teach them so they can do it themselves. Tom thought about it for a moment. He had never considered teaching anyone. His work had always been about catching fish, not sharing his skills. But something in Lily's suggestion made sense. Maybe he could still help the village, even if he couldn't be on the water every day. I don't know, Tom said slowly. No one will be able to fish like I did. Maybe not, Lily agreed, but they can learn. And the more people who know, the better it will be for everyone. Tom looked at her with a thoughtful expression. I'll think about it. Tom spent the next few days thinking about Lily's idea. He wasn't sure if he could teach others. He was a fisherman, not a teacher. But as he sat by the sea, watching the waves crash against the shore, he realized that Lily was right. If he couldn't fish for the village, maybe he could teach others to do it. The next morning, as he prepared his old boat for one last trip, a loud voice interrupted his thoughts. "Ahoy!" called a man from the shore. Tom looked up and saw a man in a bright blue sailor's uniform walking towards him. The man had a strong build and a confident smile. He introduced himself as Captain Gregg, a sailor who had come from another land. "Greetings, fisherman," Captain Gregg said. "I've heard about your village and its troubles. I think I can help. I have new ideas for how you can make money. The old ways of fishing are outdated. I can show you a better way." Tom didn't know what to make of Captain Gregg. The sailor spoke with confidence, but something about him felt off. Tom had spent his whole life fishing in the old ways, and he wasn't sure if these new ideas would work. The villagers, however, were excited. They gathered around Captain Gregg as he promised that his new methods would bring riches to the village. He spoke of faraway lands, new kinds of fish, and ways to trade with others to make money. The king, eager for a solution, listened carefully to Captain Gregg's ideas. He was convinced this was the answer to the village's problems. But Tom was not so sure. He had spent his life respecting the sea and the rhythms of nature. How could new methods, things that were foreign to him, work better than what he had known? As the village started to follow Captain Gregg's new methods, Tom felt more and more left out. He no longer felt needed. The villagers were excited about the changes, and they didn't seem to care about the old ways anymore. They were busy learning from Captain Gregg, and Tom's heart grew heavy with sadness. One day, Lily found Tom sitting by his old boat, staring out at the sea. She could see the frustration and sadness in his eyes. "Tom," she said softly, sitting down beside him, "I see what's happening. You feel like you're being left behind. But I think there's a way you can help." Tom turned to her, his face filled with doubt. "I'm not sure there's any place for me anymore. The villagers are excited about Captain Greg's ideas. I'm just an old fisherman." Lily shook her head. "The new ideas are good, but they don't understand the old ways. The sea works in rhythms, Tom. If you combine the old ways with the new ones, maybe you can help the village without losing what's important." Tom looked at her, unsure. "I don't know if I can teach them both. They've already made their choice." "You can," Lily said with a gentle smile. "And I'll help you. The villagers respect you. They just need to see that the old ways and the new ways can work together." Tom thought for a moment. Could it be true? Could he teach the villagers both the old and new ways of fishing? Maybe Lily was right. Maybe he still had something to offer. Tom decided to give it a try. He went to the village square and called for a meeting. Many villagers were curious to hear what he had to say. They had already started following Captain Greg's methods, but they were still willing to listen to Tom. Tom explained how the sea worked in cycles, how some fish could only be caught in certain seasons, and how they needed to respect the balance of nature. He talked about the importance of patience and understanding the ocean, things that Captain Greg's methods didn't seem to consider. At first, the villagers were skeptical. They had already learned Captain Greg's methods and didn't see the need to go back to the old ways. But Tom was patient. He showed them how to use the new techniques alongside the old ones. He taught them how to care for the fish and the sea, making sure they didn't take too much. Slowly, the villagers started to see the results. They caught more fish, and the fish lasted longer. The village began to prosper again, and Tom felt a sense of purpose return to his life. The days passed, and the village began to change. The new fishing methods, combined with the old traditions, worked well. The villagers had more fish to sell and share. People who had once struggled to make ends meet now had enough to eat. And the village felt alive again. Tom had become a teacher, guiding the villagers with both wisdom and patience. He spent his days showing them how to cast nets, how to understand the tides, and how to fish responsibly. Every day, more villagers joined his classes, and soon, Tom wasn't just a fisherman. He was a leader in the village. One day, the king summoned Tom to the palace. Tom had been hearing good things about the village's progress, but he wasn't sure what the king thought. The king had been worried about the village's future, and Tom wasn't sure if he would understand the changes that had taken place. When Tom entered the palace, the king greeted him warmly, but his face was serious. "Tom," the king said, "I've heard that the village is thriving again. I'm glad things are improving, but I want to understand what has changed. tell me what you have done?" Tom explained how the villagers had combined the new methods with the old ways. He told the king how they respected the sea's rhythms and learned to use the best of both worlds. Tom shared how important it was to honor tradition, but also to stay open to new ideas. The king listened carefully. "I see," he said slowly. "You've managed to bring balance back to the village. I thought we would have to let go of everything from the past, but it seems I was wrong." Tom smiled. "It wasn't just me, Your Majesty. It was the villagers working together. They've learned that change doesn't mean forgetting the past." The king nodded. "You've reminded me of something important, Tom. We must respect both the old ways and the new. I've decided that we will support you. You will continue to teach the villagers, and I'll make sure they are paid fairly for their work." Tom's heart lifted. He had feared that the king wouldn't see the value in the old ways, but now he felt more certain than ever that the village would be all right. The king continued, "I'll also make sure the village can sustain itself. We will trade the fish with nearby villages, and I will support the new fishing school you've started. You've proven that we can have both progress and tradition." Tom bowed his head. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I will do my best to help the village grow." With the king's blessing, the village flourished. Tom became a respected teacher, leading the new fishing school. More and more villagers came to learn how to fish, and with Tom's guidance, they became skilled fishermen and women. As the months passed, the village became known for its fish, not only in the local markets, but also in nearby towns. People traveled from far and wide to see the village that had managed to combine the old ways of fishing with new techniques. Tom's reputation spread, and he was proud of what the village had achieved. Lily, who had always been there to support Tom, continued her work, helping the village in other ways. She organized fairs, helped the sick, and made sure that everyone had what they needed. The people of the village loved her for her kindness, and Tom respected her deeply. Without her, he knew he might have never seen the potential in combining the old ways with the new. Captain Greg, though he had initially brought new ideas to the village, saw the wisdom in Tom's methods. He had tried to teach the villagers about trade and new fishing tools, but he had underestimated the power of tradition. He left the village, deciding to pursue his ideas elsewhere, knowing that Tom's approach was the one that had truly worked. With the king's support, Tom was able to build a real school by the sea, where children and adults alike learned how to fish and respect the ocean. It wasn't just about catching fish anymore. It was about understanding the sea and the delicate balance between nature and people. The villagers, once divided between the old ways and the new, were now united. They shared the same respect for the ocean, the same pride in their work, and the same joy in their success. Tom, who had once felt lost and unsure of his place in the world, now stood tall as a leader and teacher. One evening, as Tom watched the sun set over the sea, Lily came to sit beside him. "You've done it, Tom," she said, her voice soft but filled with admiration. Tom smiled at her. "We've all done it. The village, the king, the sea. We've all worked together." Lily looked out at the water, where the boats bobbed gently in the harbor. "It's not just the fishing that's important, is it? It's how the village learned to work together, to respect each other's skills." Tom nodded. "That's right. It's about sharing knowledge, respecting the land, and trusting one another." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Tom felt a deep sense of peace. He had spent his life fishing the sea, but now he knew that his true work had just begun. Teaching the village, preserving the old ways, and building a future with his neighbors was his new purpose. And for the first time in many years, Tom felt that everything had come full circle. With Tom's leadership, the fishing school continued to grow. The village no longer relied solely on trade for survival. They had become self-sufficient, harvesting enough fish for everyone and trading with neighboring villages. The skills that Tom had passed on were becoming part of the village's culture. The king, now fully understanding the value of tradition and new ideas working together, continued to support the village in every way he could. He made sure the villagers had everything they needed to keep the fishing school running, and to ensure that the sea would always provide. As the years went by, Tom's reputation spread far beyond the village. Fishermen from all over came to learn from him, and the village became a symbol of how blending the old with the new could lead to success. The once skeptical villagers who had questioned Tom's ways now respected him as their leader and teacher. Lily continued to help the villagers in every way she could, organizing events, festivals, and helping the less fortunate. Her role in the village grew as she became more involved in the daily life of the people. She and Tom, though they had never spoken of it, shared a deep bond, and their friendship was stronger than ever. The village was now thriving, and Tom had found his new purpose. The sea was still his home, but now he understood that his work wasn't just about catching fish. It was about teaching others, sharing his knowledge, and making sure the future of the village was secure. And so, with the king's support, the villagers' hard work, and Tom's leadership, the village entered a new era. One where tradition and progress lived side by side, where everyone worked together to keep the sea's rhythms alive for generations to come.